Welcome back, friends, to another week of Altered TCG Tournament Results as provided by Hero's Guide to Asgartha. It's chilly and I'm back again, so let's see how we've gone for the week. Beginning with AWOL on the Monday tournament, Season 3, Week 6, we had 123 players, so an increase of 5 on last week. And the main thing that I want to take out of today was that there was just one deck that was undefeated. It was Kojo and Buddha, and that was piloted by Guibs. And as we go through today's results, let's quickly recap what they've got in store. Really, for me, when I look at this Kojo and Buddha deck, Duel of Grit stands out, and only one copy of the Hunger. Now we're seeing the Hunger being played in almost every kind of Bravos deck, and it is surprising to see the one, but you can see that they are playing very low to the ground. Haven Bouncer being just a staple in every single Bravos deck we have, but as well as Tiny Jin, which allows, as well as Mighty Jin, actually, this is interesting, Tiny Jin and Mighty Jin both being played to be able to ramp, being able to get the benefits of the Hunger out early, even though there is just the one that they have in place. Intimidation also being very pivotal, but it is only at a only two cards of those and only one mana eruption. So what you're really seeing here is very much a go fast, go hard deck for Kojo and Buddha. But let's have a look at the uniques that they've got in place. So the first one they have is an Ozma that's 3/2 for 1/3/0 in stats, and when played from hand, target character gains 1 boost. At dusk, if I have 1 or more boosts, draw a card. So this is basically a double draw. 1 on play from hand, 1 on play from reserve if you can get an additional boost. But that additional card draw is so pivotal in all the Bravos characters as they don't have access to much of it. The second unique they've got is the Lyra Navigator, 2/2/4 for 3/3, and this is double sabotage. Fantastic. So 1 from hand and also when played from reserve. It does have an ability that you can play when it's in the reserve. I don't think you use this much. I think the sabotage is usually much stronger, but up to 1 target character gains fleeting. The third one, and it's actually quite interesting to see an expensive unique, which is 4/4. I can't believe I'm talking about a 4-cost card being expensive, but it is 4/4 for 3/6/3, but he has Tough 2, and you may discard one of your mana orbs if you do sabotage, and once again, a double sabotage on this as well. So trying to control your opponent's progressions through sabotage is really the key part of the way that this deck plays, and the next card you play this afternoon costs 1 less, is its reserve ability. Alright, the second deck, there were 2 decks that actually went undefeated. The second one was piloted by Tempered Delanage, piloting Afanis and Senka, and he is very well known across the Altered world, and what you are seeing here is very much what you're normally seeing, traditional spell-heavy deck. What you're also looking at here is there are a couple of characters that can also gain Anchored, so looking at that method of play. Sneezer's Shroom, though, is something that I'm not seeing very much of, but let's go have a look at their uniques. But actually, before we do, the landmark, the Nylon Withered Tree, is becoming now a staple in the way that Afanis is now being piloted, at least for the 3rd season. So in terms of their uniques, the first one that they had was a 2/1 Muna Caregiver for 1/0/1 in stats. And at dusk, if I have 1 or more boosts, you may return a card other than me from your reserve to your hand. When I leave the Expedition Zone, so a second ability, if you control 1 or more landmarks, you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. So this is double spell retrieval. Fantastic. And if you don't want to use that and you want to use its ability from reserve, up to 1 target character with hand cost 3 or less, other than me, gains Anchored. Fantastic. This is really, really cool, really exciting, awful to play against. When you see this come out, you really have to find a way of getting rid of it, getting rid of this Muna Caregiver before any spells are truly played, because when it leaves the Expedition Zone, it also can retrieve a spell. The second unique that they've got is a 2/2/0/1/1, and let's have a read of what it does. So on play, from anywhere, draw a card. And second effect, this is when played from reserve, you may put a card from your hand in reserve. If it's a spell, you may return a card from your reserve to your hand. So really looking at ways of exchanging what you've got in your reserve. And this has the same similar ability if you wanted to use its reserve ability, up to one target character with hand cost 3 or less, other than me, gains anchored. The third of the uniques that we've got is a 2/1 Orders Cadet for 1/0/1 in stats. When I leave the expedition zone, if I have one or more boosts, create an Orders Recruit soldier token in target expedition. So this is great of being able to get some bodies on the board for the next day, and it occurs twice. And at dusk, if I have one or more boosts, you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. So very much the traditional Afanis build that we've seen and grown to either love or hate, depending on which side of the fence you sit on in terms of playing Afanis or not, and that recursion of all your spells, constantly being very low to the ground, paying very little and getting a lot back for what you do. And as we know, the majority of the spells are much cheaper from hand than they are in reserve, and they're able to play them out much quicker and like a boomerang, bringing back my Aussie roots. Okay, the second of the tournaments that I want to talk about here, and this is the first time we're actually looking into the Altered League LATAM, so that's Latin American. They have a very strong turnout, and I wanted to bring them into the fold of my discussions on the decks the decks that are performing well. So what we're seeing here is still very much strong beyond the gates. 60%. We're going to see almost a 60-20-20 split across every one of the different tournaments that have been played. The difference here is I am also seeing less and less of the Axiom builds, which I thought we would see a lot more, and they have a lot more on the Muna builds, which we're starting to see a lot less of. What's interesting here is there is only 2 heroes represented from Lyra, and we'll see if that changes over time. And in this tournament, this 58-player tournament, there was one deck that went undefeated. It's Trace and Rossum, as we saw. Axiom, the least represented, with only, and I'll say this, only 2 Trace decks, and one of them won. So let's have a look at their deck. So what we're looking at here, this was piloted by KRA Keifu, and the main thing that I look at here is you're looking at your Keelon cylinders, your Haven Bravos Bastions, looking at ways of getting additional boosts in what you've got, using Hooked as a late game chance to not only draw, but also looked to make sure that you at least advance on one expedition. And then they've got some very special uniques that I want to have a look at. Actually, before we do, Vike, we're seeing a lot more of Vike be played in decks, especially because you can, if anyone does not sabotage, but exhaust your cards in your deck, it allows you to start playing them again. So let's have a look at the 3. And Gibble's actually quite interesting here. I believe it's more for its ability when in reserve than it would be for being played. So the 3 uniques they've got, the first one is a Repotter Otter for 3/2 for 2/2/1. When played from reserve, each player may put a card from their hand in reserve, and you're really seeing in the Trace and Rossum build that you just want to play as much as you can from your reserve and get your triggers up so that you can start making the benefit. What we also didn't really mention here is that they're really not using the bug fix mode. This is more your traditional build, or as close to traditional as you've got. The second ability that happens is when a card from your hand or deck when a card goes from your hand or deck to reserve, create a Brassbug 2/2 robot token in your other expedition. So this allows you to play on one side and get some benefit on the other. Not many cards have that, which is great. But then they've got a second one, very similar in terms of Repotter Otter, 3/3 for 1/3/1 in stats. And this is from anywhere. Each player may put a card from their hand in reserve, and then when a card goes from your hand or deck to reserve, create a Brassbug 2/2 robot token in your other expedition. This one, though, does have an ability from reserve, which is you may activate the arrow ability of target permanent you control. And the third one we've got is a Tinkerbell that draws a card. So 3/3 for 2/02, and played from anywhere, you can draw a card. And when I leave the expedition zone, you may put a card from your hand in reserve. If you do sabotage, which is, putting things into reserve, is exactly what Trace and Rossum does, and it's double sabotage, double draw. Really, really strong. This would be also very tough to play against. I'm interested to see. I've not met Kaifu yet, but I'm looking forward to playing against them and see if any of my decks can stand up to a champion's deck. And all the people we're going to talk about today, all the decks, all the pilots, are champions in their own right. The third tournament, now we're moving from the Monday tournaments to the Tuesday ones. Ace single elimination. So this is Kohlrabi's tournament, or Altered Corner. And slightly different to most of the others in that this is single elimination. 29 players that were in this, and we're seeing here a little bit higher in terms of the breakdown of Beyond the Gates, but Trial by Frost and Whispers from the Maze very similar, actually exactly the same, just under 18% of the deck formation. We only got to see Tasia here, so only people playing Tasia from a Muna deck, and people are really, on at least at this tournament, giving up on the other heroes that are Muna based, and we are seeing that a lot, and we will see that throughout most of the decks, though there is one that I'm really happy with that we're going to talk about in a minute, and this was won by one of my teammates, actually. It's Rinku, winning through with his Nevenka and Bloch build. Very, very strong. I'm really interested to share with you guys what he does have in terms of his uniques, in the way that it's played. This looks very, very, I would call it very traditional, though, and we're starting to see X Mark the Spot become part of people's decks. Only the common ones, so not the rare, so we won't allow him to be able to get an extra, I guess, readied resource in play. And the main thing I wanted to have a look at is in terms of the uniques. The first one is an Esmeralda, 1/2 for 2/0/1 in stats, and when played from reserve, if you have 3 or more base statistics, if you have 3 or more base statistics of 0 among characters you control, you will resupply. And when I leave the expedition zone, if I have 1 or more boosts, you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. And in many cases, because you are using Nevenka and Bloch, you will be able to get that boost. That's 2/3 of the chances will give you that. Potentially more so if you have card manipulation, cards that alter the manipulation of the dice, especially being Martingale, of which he has 3. The second one of the cards of the uniques that he's got in play is a 2/2 Kadigaran Mage Dancer. I'll get it right eventually. 1/2/2 for 2/2 resources, and when played from hand, you roll a die. On a 4+, I gain 1 boost for each card in your reserve, and then another effect. This is from any time it happens when you roll 1 or more dice. Up to 1 target character gains fleeting. And then the third one that they've got is a Lyra Cloth Dancer, 2/2 for 0/2/1. You may return a card from your hand to you may return a card from your reserve to your hand. That's when played from hand. And at dusk, each character controlled by target player gains fleeting. This is the way that they will interrupt the way that their opponent is playing. Is really looking toward getting fleeting, making sure each other character only gets played once on the opponent's side. Very interesting. Lyra Contortionist is also another character that they do have. I'm still not sold on that card, but I'm seeing it more and more in not only Lyra decks, but also Muna decks as well. Okay, that takes us to the third tournament. Okay, that takes us to the Wednesday tournaments, and there were 2 of them that we're going to talk about. The first one being the AQZ NUC, which is the No Unique Championship. And here, one thing of note is there was a Rin and an Orchid. Rin and Orchid, one of those 2 ways of saying it. 6-0, piloted by Biwat Padawan. This is, for me, the most impressive of all the wins for the week, purely because we are seeing a different Muna character being played out. Let's go into their deck, and what we can see here is Lyra Festival builds are starting to come back, or at least they have come back in this tournament, whereas there's no crazy uniques. I'm also very surprised that they still won because it is still prevalent. At least there is so much removal that is prevalent in decks today, but they managed to hold it off and win. So their Capellias, with their Persephones, their daughter Idrisils, the Talarian Skater as their rares, and of course a rare Lyra Festival being played out. Beauty Sleep, Floral Tent, Magic Beans are part of their spells that they do. Really, really interesting. They have got a balanced attack in terms of what they can sleep, as well as what can get anchored for them. So let's have a look at what else do we need to know about this. I love that they've got 1 Yeti. Yeti is fantastic to give you boost. So if you don't have the Lyra Festival in your hand, you can still find a way of progressing through that Yeti. And the Muna Druid, of course, is a given when you're looking to play that from reserve. So well done to Biwat Padawan. I love the Star Wars reference there. Fantastic work. And that has made my day, my week actually. When I look at that result, it's really good. While I am an Ordis aficionado, Muna is my second deck. And it's nice to see some results coming from them, given they've had such a tough slog in this 3rd season. The next championship I want to go through is the AQZ Championship. So this happens on Thursdays, 83 players, so it's a slight reduction on the prior week. We are seeing a reduction also in the amount of BTG being represented, 55%, so it's about 5% lower than most of the other tournaments. One thing of note here is every hero has been represented in the 83 field except for Waru. That is a given in many cases that you don't play that unless you've got some fantastic uniques or you're doing it for fun. I don't know how many people do it, but we do have some players in AQZ that love to play them, and I think it is more of a gimmick. Now on this, 3 players went undefeated. We had a Basira and Kaisermon, a Kojo and Buddha, and a Gulrang and Toxin. Fantastic work on the Gulrang. It's nice to see that. And Basira is the deck that I'm currently playing, so I'm interested to see how they go, how Crosskulls has gone on that. So let's have a look at their deck. So from Crosskulls, the main thing that I see here is the Keelon Cylinder build, and that's something I probably need to be adding a lot more. Duel of Grit, only 2 instead of 3 being played, preferring the Mana Eruption, 1 rare and 1 unique, 1 rare and 1 common, and 2 physical trainings for the boosting power capability of that. I'm surprised that there's not 3 Duel of Grits, given that I believe that is the strongest card in Bravos to have come out of the 3rd set. Spirit Wielder is another card that they're using that I haven't really used, so I'm interested to see how they use that. So really looking to boost multiple characters, and you can see it's very low to the ground in most cases outside of your Klutz and the Hunger. And of course you've got to keep your Mighty Djinns in play because that allows you for ramping. But everything else truly is 2 or under with a few 3s, and the Haven Bouncer, the Skadi, and the Tolarian Skater. In terms of the unique, so let's have a read of the Skadi itself. So it's 3/3 for 1/3/2 in resources. When another character joins your expedition, if I'm in Mountain, target character in your other expedition gains 2 boosts. Very strong, can be used both from hand and from reserve. And this is any time another character joins. So late in the game, this card is even stronger. As long as it is in Mountain, and in most cases you have that chance, 2/3 of all the, all the expeditions, once you're inside the expedition zone, you will be able to get it. Now, Bravos Trailblazer being the next, so that is 3/4 for 3/1/2 in resource, for 3/1/2, and when played from anywhere, if you control a fleeting character, characters you control gain 1 boost, really strong already, and so that automatically triggers when you play it from reserve. But if you have played this second, that's really great, and then when you're also playing it from hand, you may put a card from your hand in reserve. If you do, I gain 1 boost per fleeting character you control. So it can get quite massive, or if you've got 2 cards in reserve, then you play those first and then you play this out. Really, really strong. The Skadi, though, I forgot to mention, does have an ability, a passive ability, not a passive ability, from reserve ability. The next card you play this turn costs 1 less. The Bravos Trailblazer has the next card you play this turn gains 1 boost. And then we're looking at a unique, a Klute, 5/5 for 2/2/5. So from anywhere, you may discard a character from your reserve. If you do, I gain 2 boosts. And then when I gain 1 or more boosts, if I'm the only character in my expedition, draw a card. So this is the issue with many of the Bravos. Finding a way of drawing a card is something that it's lacking in many cases. They're doing that, and also when you want to, you can use its reserve ability to just draw a card, playing it as a quick ability. So interesting build. What we're seeing here is that all the uniques are very different. It's not something we're traditionally seeing, or at least not what we're seeing become the norm in many of the competitive decks, is where they're looking for that same ability or the same character being played. The second hero to have gone 3-0, we're now looking for a second Bravos, not 3-0, that has gone undefeated, is Psycho 244, and they have a Bravos Bastion build. Very much focused on speed, very much focused on just not caring about what your opponent does until you look at the uniques that they've got in play. So let's have a look at that with the 3 Haven Bouncers that make up their deck. So the first one being a 3/3 for a 3/3/1 in resources. When played from reserve, the next card you play this afternoon costs 1 less. And when I leave the expedition zone, so this is at any time, so if you get to play it twice, you get to do it twice. When I leave the expedition zone, Sabotage. And what this happens is you will always sabotage something if they have got anything coming into the reserve at the end of the day, because that leaving the expedition zone and joining a new expedition, going to your reserve happens instantaneous. The second one is a 3/3 for 3/1/3 stats, so switching over the mountain with the water stats. When played from reserve, you may pay 1. If you do, up to 2 target characters each gain 1 boost. And once again, the same ability, when I leave the expedition zone, sabotage. And this has a quick ability of the next character you play this turn gains 1 boost. The third of his Haven Bouncers, or their Haven Bouncers, is 3/4 for 3/3 toon stats, and when played from reserve, you may discard 1 of your mana orbs. If you do, up to 2 target characters each gain 2 boosts. This is really great in late game if you get this in the late game. And when I leave the expedition zone, you may sabotage. So all 3 uniques have that when I leave the expedition zone sabotage, so 6 sabotage options that you have available to you in this deck. And it has a quick ability of the next character you play this turn gains 1 boost. Interesting, fascinating. I believe Kojo is very, very strong. As we saw in Lille, it was the most represented deck out there, and these uniques would do very well in any tournament. As we've seen online, I also think this is fantastic in person. Tough to play around when these come out at a fairly cheap rate with fairly decent stats as well. The third of the decks, which is another great one for me to see, is Ghoul, Rang, and Toxin going up undefeated. And they're using 2 very different builds, or 2 different uniques that I would not have expected in a Ghoul, Rang, and Toxin deck, and that is 2 Jack Frost. And Atlas is going to be fun to be able to see what they've got. And here we're really seeing Ghoul, Rang balance their approach in terms of spells to what characters you have. So hopefully what they're really trying to do is, can they win a little early? Of course, the landmarks are always going to be the same. Orders, Carriers, and Messentets. That is basically a staple. And you've got your rare mobile armory, so that if you do have your defenders out, you may be able to still win a side early. So it's not waiting for the late game to win. License withdrawals, a staple, an absolute staple in anything that's Orders these days. Teamwork training, and this will come very handy, bringing those teamwork trainings out, purely because you should be able to flood the board with a lot of your Orders recruits. So let's have a look at the 3 uniques that they've got in play. The first one is a Jack Frost that is 2/2 for 0/1/1. When played from hand, target character other than me gains 1 boost. Okay, that doesn't seem too strong yet. Let's keep reading. So then when played from reserve, you may pay 1. If you do, you may exhaust target character in reserve. Alright, let's have a look at what else it can do, because it has 3 abilities. The third one, when another character joins my expedition, create an Orders recruit 1/1/1 soldier token in your other expedition. There you go. That is the reason why this is in the deck. It's to be able to bring those additional tokens out, and each one of them comes out, because it is Ghoul, Rang, as a 2/2/2. The second Jack Frost that they have as unique is a 1/1/3 for 3/2 in terms of its cost from hand and reserve. If your hand is empty, you may exhaust target character in reserve. Hopefully this is not something that they do very often, but once again, similar ability, when another character joins my expedition, if you control the token, create an Orders recruit soldier token in your other expedition. So this is when any character, and the same thing as the Jack Frost, when any character, it does not have to be a non-token character. Now let's have a look at their Atlas, which is 6/6 for 2/2/3, and this is tokens you control have gigantic. This is the best kind of Atlas that you want. And when I leave the expedition zone, you may put a card from your hand in reserve, and if you do, draw 3 cards. Now that is great. Man, that is insane actually. You should be able to play this twice without fear of losing the benefits of your tokens, and you get the draw 3 cards. And this is probably the best kind of ability that you want. It's when I leave the expedition zone, so even if they do something to get rid of the card whatsoever, you'll at least get the 3 draws. It doesn't matter. There's no way of stopping that unless they sleep it, but then they constantly have to sleep it. And there we go. Now we're going to go to the US-centered AWOL. This is on Wednesday nights in the US. 47 players. And what we're seeing here is there was just one hero that made it 6-0 one out, and that is a Farnus piloted by TDC Zarp MH. Now, this TDC Zarp MH is once again very much focused on using the Nylon Wither Tree, 2/3 of your deck basically being spells, and then looks like this is the future for a Farnus, or the current mechanism for a Farnus is getting characters out that you can anchor. A lot more anchoring. This does have Tooth Fairies, so we're looking at some more interaction, not just with the Off You Goes, and not just with the Rime Frost, in a way to be able to make sure that you can stop your opponent from playing their cards from reserve, but it has the Tooth Fairies in there. And of course the Katagaran Mage Dancer is just pivotal. Let's have a look though at the 3 uniques that they've got. So the first one being Spindle Harvester, 2/2 for 2/0/0 in stats, and when played from your hand, I gain anchored. At dusk, if I have 2 or more boosts, you may return a card after the meet from the reserve to your hand. Really good, really useful. And so at dusk means that this Spindle Harvester, when played from hand, will be able to trigger twice to give you that spell recursion, and then once from reserve. And if you don't want to use it from reserve, you can just use its quick ability. You may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. The second one is Amuna Caregiver, similar to what we spoke about in the past, except, that we spoke about earlier. So 2/2 for 0/1/1, and when played from anywhere, draw a card. And then from a reserve, you may put a card from your hand in reserve. If it's a spell, you may return a card from your reserve to your hand. So if you've got the spell you don't want and you want to switch it out, you can do that. And the good thing is, if you want to put a character out, you can do the same thing to get a spell back. Sorry, it has to be a spell to return a card. I apologize. And this quick ability that the Muna Caregiver has is up to 1 target character with hand cost 3 or less, other than me, gains anchor. The Orders Trooper that they've got access to is 2/1 for 1/1/1, and target character gains 1 boost when played from reserve. And similar, when I leave the expedition zone, if I have 1 or more boost, and normally you'd give the boost here at a bare minimum, you may return a card other than me from your reserve to your hand. So this will also occur twice. Spell recursion, very much your traditional build, while also having Nylon as well, and in your arsenal to be able to bring out some of those mana moths. And that takes us to the end of the week. I'm looking forward to what next week brings. Let's see if one of the other not utilized very often heroes, some of these forgotten heroes, can come up and win something. Now I'm looking at Lyra. Can any of the Lyra heroes outside of Fen, and in this case Nevenka's getting a little bit of gameplay, and something else, come out and shine? He is hoping. Let's see if we can do that, and you never know. Now, what my real wish would be, before I close up, is can we get somebody to pilot Arjun and make him viable? I'm not even saying win it, but make him viable. Make it onto my list, which shows the top deck, anything that's undefeated, and anything that's gone X1, so lost 1 game in their rounds. That's what I normally show. Looking forward to next week and having you guys join me. And until next time, hasta luego.